So we're checking out this outdoor IP camera by ESCAM. It's a 1080p camera with a 2 megapixel lens. It's a 3.6 millimeter focal length. I'll leave all the specs in the description in the video along with the link to the camera itself. There's a couple connectivity options. You do have the Wi-Fi connection. It is only 2.4 gigahertz, but you will get up to a 150 megabit handshake. And I didn't have any issues with connectivity or low signal. It had actually got picked up great signal even outdoors due to the antenna. You do have an option for Ethernet, but it does not have power over Ethernet, unfortunately. So if you were looking at running a wire for doing power over Ethernet to a camera, this probably wouldn't be your best choice. It does come with a power adapter, some of your standard size 12 volt 1 amp power adapter. You can of course get extension cables for these that will extend and go to the connection, but you do have the option of going over Ethernet instead of using Wi-Fi, which can be somewhat problematic due to the amount of bandwidth that you pull through different various cameras, and it ends up kind of bringing your Wi-Fi bandwidth down. But one thing I did find with this camera, which isn't listed in the specs, but if you look in the web interface, which we'll step through later, it does support H.265 over, which a lot of cameras only support H.264. And so it's more efficient on compression with video, so you won't be pulling a lot of bandwidth if you use the H.265 option in this camera. Comes with a regular type of ball mount that you mount with 3 screws. You tighten these 3 screws up and you put it to a position you want. And you can mount it upside down and then use the option in the web GUI to flip over the video in the camera itself. They do give you, for the Ethernet option, they do give you a plug, a waterproof plug to put over your wire if you want to use Ethernet. And it also does have a little link light here showing the data activity over Ethernet. But again, it doesn't have power over Ethernet, unfortunately. It has local storage with DVR-like qualities using the app or the web GUI. You can put a micro SD card in the actual camera, and it installs inside the camera itself, probably to keep the waterproof properties of the camera. So we'll pull this out here and take a look at things as we would like to do. There is a little rubber seal. There's nothing really in the cavity of the camera itself, so it only covers about half of the cavity of the camera. But you can see right here, they're just like on, say, a Raspberry Pi, except this one is spring-loaded. You can put a micro SD card up to 128 gigs inside the camera for local storage. So that's it for the camera itself. Pretty simple. Just mount it on your eave or your wall or whatnot, and let's go check out the web GUI and some footage from this thing. This is the web GUI interface on the camera itself. They do have a web plugin that you have to install, and it only works for that higher definition under Internet Explorer. You can access the other settings on Google Chrome and Firefox, but you just won't get the higher resolution inside your web browser. No, in the video it's not snowing outside, it's just raining and misting, and so due to the infrared it looks like kind of like snow, and that's what you're seeing on the camera here. So you do have you can do a playback, and you can do, if you have the micro SD card, you can do the playback. You got remote settings, and that's what we're really interested here. In the remote settings, you got several different options where you can name the camera. You can put the channel display, the time, etc. You've got several different settings for the image control, with the infrared cut and when it turns on and off, the iris type, the flicker control, etc. All your typical camera settings you'll have. And I did notice you'll keep seeing the M in the middle. That's the motion, and it sees that as motion, so it triggers when it records. Network config, pretty simple. You got your network config, you got your wireless config, your various ports. You can have it email you, you can have it FTP, you've got dynamic DNS, and of course RTSP. You can use RTSP for various camera recording devices, and including you can view it in VLC. You've got code parameters, and here's what I talked about before. They do have the H.265 option, and you can change this to H.264 if you need to bump that down and you don't want to be as efficient, or you may have an issue with decoding H.265. You can change that, and also you can change the resolution of the camera. And then you also have the substream, which is a lower resolution, and it's H.264 and it's as a SD resolution. The camera also does record audio, and it uses G711U. You can change the input volume. Typical settings for record config, you got alarm config. This is the motion, and you can set which squares you want for the motion. Where if you just wanted this area to trigger motion, so in case like you had some like there's chimes in this right here, we don't want the chimes to be triggering off the motion. And you can change the sensitivity, and you can tell it to do different things when it triggers motion. So system config, pretty simple. You have all the daylight savings time, then your NTP server, configure to your area. You can configure the users, do time capture, device info, shows you all your firmware, and there it does have pan tilt zoom setting, but this of course isn't a pan tilt zoom. And of course you have your disk information, which shows I do have a 32 gig card in here. It shows the space and what's going on, and you can format it and refresh. And you can also access the video files. So that's pretty much it for the settings on the camera itself. They do have an app, which you do pair it with, which you download the app for iOS or Android and pair it with, and you can view the camera straight from their application. Also, if you want to utilize the local recording using the micro SD card in the camera itself, and you go to playback and go to remote, and you can search the calendar, and it shows where you have video files. And if you search just the day you want, and you'll populate at the bottom showing when you had activity or recordings. I only had this recording whenever there was actual motion, and you can instantly play back straight through the browser. And you can also do the same thing through the application on your phone. The only downside is you don't have PoE, but for a lot of people that may not be a problem because they want to use Wi-Fi and they're wanting to put it on some other side of the house and they cannot run an Ethernet cable to it. So they're looking for be able to just plug it in and get up and running very quickly. It'd be a great little camera. Like I said, it does H.265, which will help out with lessen the Wi-Fi bandwidth. I appreciate you watching, and y'all take care.